Okay, hola chicos, this video is going to walk you through the notes for E5 Unit 1, notes number 1 on the present subjunctive. So in Spanish, verbs have both tenses and moods. Now we know that tenses talk about a point in time, like the past, present, or future tense, and moods actually talk about feelings. Now there are only two moods. There's one that talks about certainty, this first one, and that is what we call the indicative. Then there is a mood called the subjunctive, which talks about doubt or uncertainty. So, up until this point, we've really talked about certainty, so we've almost always used the indicative mood. But now we will learn to talk about things that are not certain by using the subjunctive mood. So things that are uncertain might be things like your doubts, your hopes, requests, maybe they'll be fulfilled, maybe they won't be fulfilled, we don't know, or even not knowing if something actually exists. We can use the subjunctive mood in any tense, past, present, or future, but today we are going to stick solely to the present tense subjunctive. So, how the heck do you form these verbs? So verbs in the present tense of the subjunctive mood are formed similarly to how we form usted or ustedes commands, as well as negative to commands. So here's how we do it, because it's been a minute. It's been since last year since we've talked about this. So step one is to simply take the yo form of the present indicative. So from here on out, the present indicative will refer to the basic present tense verbs that you probably learned how to conjugate in junior high Spanish in 7th or 8th grade. The next thing that we do is we're going to drop the letter O from the yo form conjugation. So for example, if I were conjugating comer, I would say yo como, right? My stem, if I drop the letter O, would be C-O-M, okay? Then after that, what we're going to do in step 3 is switch the endings as summarized in the verb houses that we're about to fill out below. And again, this is just like what you would do to form usted or ustedes commands. So let's start on the left side with these AR verbs. And this follows the order of the verb house, which you should know and love for sure by now. So we've got, and for the AR verbs, we've switched the ending. So we've got es, e. Then, as you can probably intuit, we've got hemos, eis, and ein. Over on the ERIR verb side, we've switched to the letter A, or a in español. So we've got a, as, a, amos, ais, an. So feel free to pause the video if you need to. Make sure all of these are written down, and more importantly, you understand what's going on here, and then I'll see you on the next page. Vale. Okay, so we are now on to page 2. This is going to start with regular verbs, so those verbs that follow the rules. Now keep in mind that the rules of the subjunctive are to just conjugate in the present indicative, but then switch the ending, okay? So here are some examples. Up at the top, you are going to see 3 infinitives. So they represent AR verbs with hablar, ER verbs with comer, and IR verbs with escribir, ¿vale? Going down, we have the verb house bedrooms. So yo, tú, él, ella, usted, etc. And we're going to fill these in, and there are more to fill in as we progress. So we're going to start with the AR verb hablar, which is to speak. So we've got yo, and then normally it would be yo hablo, right, with present indicative, but now we're going to switch to subjunctive. So we just have to drop the O from the yo form and switch it and add E to the end. So we've got yo hable, tú hables, él hable, nosotros hablemos, and then hopefully you can intuit that the next one is going to be vosotros hables, and finally ellos hablen. Moving over to comer, we are going to take the yo form. Present indicative would be como, and we are going to drop the O from the como, switch it to A at the end, and move throughout the verb house from there. So we've got yo coma, tú comas, él coma, nosotros comamos, vosotros comáis, and ellos coman. Finally, for an IR verb, we've got escribir as our example, and we are going to start with the yo bedroom. Again, escribo is the yo form in that indicative present middle school verb form, but we're going to drop the O, switch it with A because it's an ERIR verb, and we've got yo escriba. Then we've got tú escribas, él escriba, nosotros escribamos, vosotros escribáis, and ellos, ellas, ustedes escriban. So those were the regular verbs, and now we have to talk about a few irregular verbs, especially those with irregular yo forms. Now, this should be review for the present tense. You guys know to say I drive, you wouldn't say yo conduco, right? You would say yo conduzco, and that's just to keep the sound. So you guys should know pretty much all of these verbs from your prior knowledge. So we're gonna have to drop the O and then switch the ending to make it the subjunctive. So for example, with conducir, normally you would say I drive, yo conduzco. However, if there's doubt, we're gonna use the subjunctive and it would be yo conduzca because it's an IR verb. And so if it's ER-IR, we switch the ending to A. So let's go right down the list here. And again, these are some examples. These are the most common examples, but not all. So we're going to talk about conocer, which is to be familiar with, to know a person or place. Yo present form indicative is yo conozco. Subjunctive would be conozca. Decir, to say. Yo digo. Yo diga in the subjunctive. Hago is the present indicative of hacer. In the subjunctive, we would say haga. Ofrecer, we would say yo ofrezco in the indicative. In the subjunctive, we would say ofrezca. Poner is to put, place, or set, like poner la mesa, por ejemplo. Yo pongo. In this case, in the subjunctive, we would say yo ponga. Tener is to have. I have, present indicative is yo tengo. We would say yo tenga for subjunctive. Traducir, yo traduzco. Subjunctive would be traduzca. Traer is to bring. You would say yo traigo in the indicative and yo traiga in the subjunctive. Venir is to come. Yo vengo, I come over to your house. We would say in the subjunctive yo venga. And ver is to see. So again, we're going to drop the O. It's an ER verb, so we add the A, and that is vea. Now, if you notice, all of these were either ER or IR verbs, so all the endings switched to A. Most of the irregular verbs are in that situation. So please do go ahead, pause the video, write all these in. You will absolutely be referring to these as we move forward, so please make sure that you've got all of these in before you hit play to go to the next page. Vale, chiquis, estamos en Página 3, and we're going to talk about cargar-zar verbs. You should know these from the preterite tense, and you should know that with these, we have to do some letter switching to keep the sound. So for example, if I wanted to say, I took out my homework this morning, well, the verb to take out is sacar, and if I do it just the regular way with SAC, and then I'm going to use my E with an accent mark, right, as the ending for yo in the preterite, it would sound like sase, and we don't want to say yo sase mi tarea, we want to say yo saqué mi tarea. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to employ some letter changes, as you can see in this chart up here. So for the letter C, we're going to change that to QU, and over here on the right, we're just going to put all of these in the yo form so you can kind of see what they would look like. Now remember, this is the present subjunctive. We have to switch the ending, so in order to keep our sound, we have to do some letter changing. So we're going to say yo saqué. Very similar thing happens with gars, G-A-R verbs, like the verb jugar. In this case, we're going to change G to GU, and we would say yo juegue. And then the same thing happens with zar verbs. Z changes to CE. And remember, if we want to say I eat lunch, because that's what almorzar is, we're going to say yo almuerzo in the present indicative, but in the subjunctive, we have to drop that O, and what we're going to do is actually change the ending. So it's an AR verb, so we're just going to tack on an E. So we can't say yo almuerce, we want to say yo almuerce, so we can really get that S sound still alive in there. So these three infinitives are written out. This is in the order of the verb house for each of them if you want to visualize the changes. But for now, we're going to move on to those pesky irregular verbs. And these are the verbs that do not follow the rules, okay? Unfortunately, we just have to memorize them. And we're going to pick 5 of the most famous irregulars that have given you trouble since day 1 because they're annoying. And they are the following: ser, estar, ir, dar, and saber. So going across, we've got the infinitives. Going down, we've got the verb house bedrooms. And the conjugations for each in the present subjunctive are the following. So for ser, to be, as in description or occupation, right? Yo soy profesor. That there's no doubt about that. I am a teacher. I would use indicative, yo soy. But if I wanted to say, well, I have doubt, I don't believe that he's a teacher, I would say, yo no creo que, I don't believe that, and then I need subjunctive because there's doubt there. So I would say, yo no creo que él sea profesor. So for the verb house boxes, we would fill them in like this, and the only one we have left for ser is ellos seas ustedes, and I bet you could intuit that the last one is going to be sean. Now moving to estar, that is to be in a condition or a location. Yo esté, tú estés, él esté, nosotros estemos, vosotros estéis, and ellos estén. Ir looks completely different. So ir is to go, and we say vaya, vayas, vaya, vayamos, vayáis, and vayan. Dar, remember, we switch it to like it's going to be an ER verb. So we've got these endings here, yo de, and careful, this does have an accent mark, and the only reason it has an accent mark is so that you don't confuse it with the word of, de in Espanol, which does not. So we've got yo de, tú des, él de, again, nosotros demos, vosotros deis, and ellos den. Finally, saber. Yo sepa, tú sepas, él sepa, nosotros sepamos, vosotros sepáis, and ellos sepan. So this is the end of part 1 of the notes. At this time, please do the following. Pause the video if you need to fill in the entire page, then take a photo of each page of the completed notes, and once you do that, you will unlock the part 2 notes video. Gracias chicos, see you on part 2.